Let's take a look at identifying stakeholders for project communications management. Identifying stakeholders is conducted at the beginning of a project. Also, it must be done occasionally during the course of a project. Such a document intended to identify project stakeholders is called the Stakeholder Register. This is a project deliverable, which contains all details related to identified stakeholders. Stakeholders are classified into internal and external stakeholders, supporters, neutrals, and resistors. With regard to the execution of a project and specific issues, supporters and resistors are also known as positive stakeholders and negative stakeholders, respectively. Next, planning communications management. It is the process of identifying information needs of the stakeholders and determining a communication approach. Effective communication refers to providing information at the right time, with the right approach and procedure. And efficient communication refers to providing required information only. In general, a project manager spends about 80 to 90% of working hours for communication activities, such as decision-making process and related meetings, and notification on issue resolution. As much as 55% of communications is delivered by nonverbal elements, such as facial expressions and body gestures. So a project manager needs to be particularly careful about how to communicate. As a project manager, I would like to share some knowledge about project communications. The number of communication channels in a project serves as an indicator of the complexity of a project's communications. If the number of persons involved in communications in a project, the total number of communication channels is n times n minus 1 over 2. For example, if 12 persons attend a meeting, the number of available communication channels is 66. The following is a communication model. The sender-message-receiver model is a basic communication model for interaction between a sender and a receiver. The message may be misunderstood, as opposed to the original intent of the sender, depending on the education level, experience, language, and cultural background of the receiver. That is why it is important to express information at an appropriate level for each receiver. The basic communication model consists of a set of elements, such as information, sender, medium, and receiver. A sender refers to the person sending the message to a receiver. The encoder is the process by which a message to be sent through a medium is converted into codes, and the codes go through a medium and a decoder to reach a receiver. If any noise comes in during the process, misleading information may be delivered to the receiver. Next is distribution of information. This is a process of making relevant information available in a timely manner, with the most preferred way for the stakeholders throughout the entire project life cycle. Distribution of information is conducted using different tools, such as document and report, email, video conference, phone call, meeting, and project website. The following table shows communication methods. Formal document type includes project plan, project charter, major contract, and status report. Informal document type includes email and memo. Formal, verbal type includes reporting, announcement, and presentation. Informal, verbal type includes meeting and daily conversation. Next is managing stakeholder expectations. A project manager communicates and cooperates with stakeholders by managing their expectations. By doing so, a project manager can fulfill the stakeholder requirements, address issues as they occur, and actively manage the stakeholder expectations. One of the key objectives of managing stakeholder expectations is to resolve issues. In addition, a project manager needs to possess interpersonal skills and management skills necessary to manage the stakeholder expectations. There is a special type of communication in project management. It is to build a virtual team, a group of team members who participate in the project from different geographic locations. Of course, the most effective way of communication is to have a face-to-face meeting, but there is an occasion where some of the team members work remotely or overseas. Consequently, communications among the team members face a barrier. This barrier hinders communication among project stakeholders, so effective communication requires overcoming some of the barriers in advance. In particular, barriers which should be overcome in a multinational project include time zones, language barriers, technology barriers, cultural differences, functional or hierarchical barrier, and communication barriers. Next is project performance reporting. Project performance reporting is the process of collecting and distributing project performance information, including project status report, progress measurements, and forecasts. Project performance report is classified into different reports: status report, progress report, variance report, and forecasting report. The following is an example of a project report. The report features the status, progress rate, and key milestones of the project, and is shared with the entire project team members. Lastly, controlling communications. Controlling communications is conducted throughout the project lifecycle. In other words, it is the process of monitoring information required by stakeholders and controlling communications among project stakeholders. A project manager must address change issues and new issues either in advance or post facto, based on an issue log, through project team meetings, and by using his or her expertise. In addition, whether shared issues and notices have been followed up should be confirmed, and the outcomes should be shared with the team members at weekly meetings. Project risk means an uncertain event or a condition that, if it occurs, will have a positive or negative effect on a project's objectives, such as its scope, schedule, cost, and quality. Project risk management mainly consists of the following processes. First, planning project risk management is the process of defining how to approach project risks and how to conduct the risk management activities. Second, identifying risks is the process of identifying potential risk factors and documenting them. Third, performing qualitative risk analysis. This involves the probability impact matrix, which assesses the probability of each risk occurrence and its impact on project objectives. Fourth, performing quantitative risk analysis. This is the process of numerically estimating the probability that a project will meet its objectives and calculating risk exposure based on the PI values. Fifth, planning risk responses is the process of developing alternatives and actions to maximize positive factors and to minimize negative factors of identified risks. Lastly, controlling risks. This is the process of monitoring and controlling risks throughout the project lifecycle. First, planning risk management. This is the process of defining how to conduct the risk management activities for a project. In other words, it's a set of activities which determine the degree and type of the risk management and the impacts of risks on the entire project. Every risk has more than one cause, and its presence has a positive or negative impact on the success of a project. During this process, a high-level plan necessary to conduct the risk management activities is developed. A risk management plan features the following components: the degree and process of the risk management, reporting system, objectives of risk management and its impacts on the project, risk management methodology roles, and the responsibilities of risk officers, risk probability impact matrix. Risk can be classified into two types: known risk and unknown risk. For a known risk, contingency reserve is allocated to each of the work packages for the risk management. For an unknown risk, which is not included in the project budget, management reserve is managed separately by the management team, outside of the project team. The term workaround refers to an unplanned response to unanticipated risks. Next is identifying risks. It is imperative to identify risks at the right timing, so activities to identify risks are very important. Identifying risks is the process of identifying potential risk factors and documenting them in advance. Techniques for risk identification include documentation reviews, information gathering techniques, checklist analysis, assumption analysis, and expert judgment. Next is performing qualitative risk analysis. This is the process of analyzing the impact of risks on a project in qualitative terms. In other words, it is the process of prioritizing risks by assessing their probability of occurrence and impacts after the risk identification is completed. This process involves a strategy focusing on high-priority risks, thereby maximizing the project performance. Qualitative risk analysis is also a method of prioritization of cost efficiency for planning risk responses. Also, it lays the foundation for performing quantitative risk analysis. The following is the techniques used for qualitative risk analysis. The most frequently used technique among them is risk probability impact assessment. This technique is analyzing the likelihood of occurrence of specific risks and assessing their potential impact on the project objectives, such as schedule, cost, quality, and performance. The next phase is performing quantitative risk analysis. This is the process of numerically analyzing the effect of the prioritized risks on overall project objectives, following the completion of qualitative risk analysis. Techniques used for quantitative risk analysis include interviewing, EMV analysis, and modeling and simulation. The term EMV refers to the expected monetary value where the risks were factored in. Next, planning risk responses. This is the process of developing alternatives and actions to enhance opportunistic factors and to reduce threats to project objectives. The following is the strategies for negative risks: avoidance, transference, mitigation, and acceptance. First, risk avoidance involves changing the project management plan to eliminate risks entirely, isolating the project objectives from the impact of a risk, or changing the objective in jeopardy. Examples of this strategy include extending the schedule, changing the strategy, and reducing the scope. Second, risk transference refers to shifting the impact of a risk to a third party, together with ownership of the response. Transference tools include the use of insurance, performance bond, various warranties and guarantees. Third, risk mitigation implies a reduction in the probability and impact of an adverse risk event to be within acceptable threshold limits. Examples of risk mitigation include reducing the probability or impact of a risk by delivering knowledge through training in case of .NET or gate-based development. Fourth, risk acceptance refers to a strategy adopted in case the project team is unable to address a specific risk in any other way. In other words, it is to accept and deal with the risks as they occur. The following is an example of a risk and issue log. The log features identified risks, decisions made on the countermeasure against each risk, and a person responsible. Lastly, controlling risks. This is the process of monitoring residual risks, identifying new risks, executing a risk mitigation plan, and evaluating the impact through the project lifecycle. As seen in the previous table, a project manager must keep track of changes made for each issue or risk and monitor the progress of each risk.